Welcome to Progression Protocol. Today's video is on the difference between short and long-term memory. When I say the word memory, what's the first thing that pops up in your head? Does the ability of storing and retrieving information come to mind, or is it more a tech-based thought? The word memory is thrown around quite a bit nowadays, but is often referred to gadgets and hardware such as random access memory, RAM, or USB flash drives, also known as memory sticks. Before we get into the differences between short and long-term memories, let's get a better understanding of how our brain works in comparison to a computer. Most people assume that their brain receives information, records it and accesses it when needed. But this is wrong. When data is stored in a computer, it will remain there in its hard drive until needed. It will then retrieve the data in the same state it was stored if there was no technical difficulties. But let's imagine if that same computer was to prioritize certain files over others and store them in weird folders that made no logical sense. Or your computer loaded up random files when you didn't need them. Can you imagine if your computer did all of these things all the time? You'd probably buy an airsoft minigun and blast it within 5 minutes of it turning on. But the craziest thing about this is that your brain does all of this all the time. With a computer you could simply replace it for a better one. But sadly, you cannot order a newer model of a brain even though some people need it. This approach of comparing our brains to computers is very simplistic and could be misleading when talking about our brain's memory system, which I'm now going to get into. The most common division in human memory is between short-term memory and long-term memory. They differ from each other greatly, but are still interdependent. Because our brain is constantly flooded with information, it needs a mechanism or a system that could deal with all this information in that very second, without throwing everything you see or hear into long-term memory storage. This is where short-term memory comes into play. Short-term memory is used for super quick processing and the manipulation of information. It wastes no time and quickly decides what is unimportant and ignores it. This is because short-term memories only last for about a minute and anything longer is stored is referred to as long-term memory. This is why neuroscientists prefer to call it a working memory, because it deals with the things in the current moment. Although the short-term memory system is very effective and works most of the time, it's not perfect. It can sometimes get rid of information before properly dealing with it, causing scenarios like when you're going into a room and you get distracted on the way by something, and this causes you to forget why you was heading in that room in the first place. Furthermore, it doesn't help that the amount of items that the short-term memory can hold at once is on average 4. Previously, the max capacity was believed to be 7 plus or minus 2 because of the study conducted by George Miller in the 1950s. But more recently, this experiment was reassessed and came to the conclusion that the actual capacity of our short-term memory at one time is 4 items. Whether you've got memories of your first holiday or your last day of high school is dependent on whether you've stored it in your long-term memory. Long-term memory is anything that you remember that's happened over a minute ago. These memories can stay with you for a few days, few months, or even a lifetime. It all depends on the strength of that specific memory. There are 3 major distinctions in long-term memory. Let's get into them individually. Procedural memory. Procedural memory is an implicit type of memory that allows us to carry out commonly learned tasks without consciously thinking about them. We've all done these tasks so often that they are referred to as our how-to knowledge and come to us easily once learned. Examples include riding a bike and driving a car. Episodic memory. Episodic memory is one type of explicit memory that is part of the long-term memory that is responsible for storing and providing information on events we've experienced in our lives. It essentially makes that trip to Dubai or what you had for dinner last night as an episode, and how we'll remember that episode is dependent on a couple of factors. What and how strong were our emotions when our brain first recorded that memory? And secondly, what did our brain hear, smell and taste in addition to the first recording of that memory? Semantic memory. The second type of explicit memory is called semantic memory. This refers to the general knowledge we have about the world and beyond. It enables us to say things without knowing exactly when and where we learnt it. An example of this is knowing that the capital of Italy is Rome. Similar to episodic memory, semantic memory also requires conscious thought. So to summarize, short-term memory is fast and manipulative, whereas long-term memory is persistent and capacious. I think it's safe to say that without both short and long-term memory, we'd all be in a loss. Make sure to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Peace.